Welcome to Technado.
Welcome back to Technado. I'm your host, Sophie Goodwin, here as always, joined by Dawn and Dan. I'm looking forward to getting into the articles this week. I know usually we start with like tech news, and we have some different categories, like we'll talk about Linux and cloud and stuff, and we have like some hardware news we're going to talk about specifically, which I always find interesting because it's something that I'm looking to maybe learn a little bit more about. I'm not real familiar with computer hardware on an intimate level, so I'm looking forward to jumping into this stuff today. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, you know, I almost derailed this week's episode because RSA is going on, and there have been some neat announcements coming out of RSA, but I decided to hold it. We'll do an RSA episode next week. You know, the world of IT security is being taken over by AI and other marketing BS. So, so we'll talk about that next week. But for this week...
You've been there, I can tell.
I have. But for this week, we do have our standard lineup of tech news. We got some Linux, some Google stuff going on, and a lot of security all coming up.
Okay. It makes sense that we talk about RSA next week, I guess. Wait for the conference to wrap up, and then maybe we can do like a recap or something. I don't know. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, bring old Wes in here because I think Wes
is there.
He's out there. He's having a good time with that right now.
I bet he is.
Oh, yeah. I guarantee he's enjoying every moment at the RSA. That what is it? The Moscone? What's the name of the...
Is it at the Moscone Center?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it? Okay.
I think that's where they do it at. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. We'll have him on. See what he learned. Maybe some new products or cool things that he saw.
Yeah, that's true.
He learned that San Francisco smells bad.
He did. Yeah, he did. Oh, I went there. Someone, they relieved themselves. I don't mean number one. Right on the old doorstep there. That was fun.
Yeah.
And then I paid $4.50 for a Coke.
Yeah.
That was this big.
That's San Francisco.
And I said, why are we here? Can't we move this?
Technology hub of the world.
Oh, that's right. That's
yeah.
It's weird.
This podcast is like a box of chocolates.
It really is.
I never know what I'm going to get when I walk in here, but I'm not complaining.
No.
So let's pivot away.
You don't even want to know what I saw in the alley.
I don't. You're absolutely
Titus was
right.
there. He can confirm. He's laughing right now. You can't hear him, but he is.
You're right. I do not want to know. But thank you for that piece of trivia. I appreciate it. Let's go ahead. If you don't mind, let's go ahead and jump into this first article. This comes to us from Tom's Hardware. It says, users report Ryzen 7000X 3D chips burning out. So I guess when like an old CPU and an old PC burns out, that's not really a big surprise. That happens. But the weird thing here is these chips are like brand new and already burning out for some users, right?
That's right. You know, and some people like to push their computers to extremes. There used to be a group called Cryotech where they would take liquid nitrogen and supercool their processors and see how far they could overclock them. But just about every motherboard out on the market today has some kind of overclocking feature that's built into it, right? OEM, right from the original manufacturer. And so it's just kind of become a standard thing. Now, most people, like for me, I overclocked some processors back in my day. Nowadays, I don't bother. It's just not worth the effort. You know, you get some instability and temperature concerns. I don't know. Daniel, do you ever get into overclocking?
Yeah, like back in the day when it became like a thing where, hey, let's put some plumber's putty around this thing and fill it full of liquid oxygen or nitrogen or whatever we got, and then, crank the wick up on it and see what it'll do. And that's kind of interesting in a I don't know, in a young person's mind, that does seem to be a bit more of their speed.
Yeah.
And as you get older, you're like, I just wanted to compute things. So I'm not cracking the case off of this and doing all this business.
I need it to work tomorrow.
Yeah, I do. That would be super helpful, seeing as I spent a bunch of money on this.
Yeah. So, a processor burning up in and of itself isn't news. But what is news here is that these aren't people pushing the processors to extremes. They're using functionality built into the BIOS of the computer to overclock within the limits of what the manufacturer is allowing. And it's leading to actual damage. You're getting warped pads on the socket, so the motherboard is dead, the CPU is dead. Pretty significant stuff. And they've got pictures. This is on Tom's Hardware where they have some pictures. I think I saw some over on arstechnica and a few other sites. This one's going the rounds. But there have been multiple users that have reported this. And it seems like the default settings that are available inside some motherboard BIOS are allowing you to overclock these Ryzen processors a little too far. Mm-hmm. And so we've already seen Asus and MSI release rush jobs to get new firmware out that removes some of the functionality, and they've been taking the old firmware offline to stop people from running it. But just know that if you overclock your processor, you can't count on the manufacturer to protect you, that you are taking a risk and you can damage your system.
Now, Don, in AMD's defense, in the firmware, the setting is referred to as, quote, shake and bake. So, I mean, I feel like you're getting what you asked for.
What were the shrinky-dinks? That's what I'm thinking.
Shrinky-dinks.
Shrinky-dinks. You know, it's like it's one size, then you heat it up and it shrinks.
Yep.
And, you know, maybe that's what's going on here.
Shrinky-dinks.
But little bit different. But yeah, there's some pictures that show this, that like the damage on there is really obvious.
Nice.
It's pretty significant. The person who actually recently discovered this posted it on Reddit and sold the processor and motherboard to a YouTuber. So like, you know, they're going on the marketing angle. That's why it's hit so many news sites. But there have been multiple users reporting this, and it does just affect people overclocking. So if you have one of these Ryzen processors, you're not necessarily at risk unless you're overclocking.
You know, it'd be nice if one day that the technology that you're trying to run with your processor would stop pacing or outpacing the actual processor itself.
I get frustrated with that.
Right? That is a little annoying, right?
Yep.
So if I've got a game, my processor should be able to handle that thing pretty well. And then as new processors come out, the game should, you know what I mean? I know they're taking advantage of the extra horsepower, but then it becomes this cat and mouse game that we never end.
Yep. If you take a look at like, you know, Windows 7 came with what, like Internet Explorer 6 or something like that. So if you install Windows 7 and on a computer from that time and you launch Internet Explorer, it takes a certain amount of time to launch. And if you take Windows 11 on a computer from today's time, it seems like Internet Explorer takes about, or Microsoft Edge takes about the same amount of time to launch. But if I were to install Windows 7 on today's hardware, it would launch crazy fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like every bit of performance gain we get in hardware, the software is eating up.
Why do they do that? Especially with operating systems. Like the only performance thing I should be getting out of that, like what insane processing power do I need to run Windows? Why do I need that processing power to run Windows operating system?
So my only guess on this is, I guess it's kind of one of two things. Either just pure laziness, right? Because the longer you support a code base, the bigger it's going to get, the more bloated it's going to get. Or it's just because when they see that extra hardware resource availability, right? More CPU, more RAM, they're like, okay, well, what crappy features can we come up with to eat this up?
Right.
Oh, we need AI here.
Right. I got to sell a product, man. It's got to have the latest and greatest thing, right?
Yep. We need a video editor that launches when your computer starts up. You might edit a video once a month, but we're going to eat up these resources all the time.
Yeah.
And,
it's a little annoying.
Madness.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's a little annoying. I'm getting annoyed on your behalf just listening to you talk about it. So
at our behest.
Yes, sure. Both of those things. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I thought this was interesting just because, I like I said, I don't really mess with hardware a whole lot. If a computer works, it works, and I'm generally not one to go in and start messing with stuff. So I guess the fact that like if you're changing it and trying to mess with it and make it, you know, like I don't know, what was the word you used?
Overclocking.
Overclocking. Yeah. Then it makes sense that maybe things would start to go wrong. But if this is literally just out of the box, that's concerning. Yeah.
So, you know, we'll go back in time here because I remember I bought a processor, and this would have been like 1996 or something. This was forever ago. It was
the first processor.
It was a Celeron 200, 200 megahertz processor. And so now we measure processors in gigahertz. This was a while ago. But you could overclock this thing, some of them, to 300 megahertz. That's a pretty big gain.
That's a big jump.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a 50% gain on it. And it was worth it to do it. But it'd get a little unstable. So if you backed off of it to 266, it would run pretty stable. And it was like getting an expensive processor for cheap. So there was a reason to do it. You fast forward to today when your processor's running at like 4.7 gigahertz, bumping it to 4.8 or 4.9 is not really that big of a benefit. And you know, there are people who are overclocking their buses so they can access memory faster, overclocking their GPUs, and to me, the performance gain just isn't there. It's just
I'm
not
assuming
worth it.
that is all for gaming and probably some crypto mining.
I would say crypto mining is more apt to be.
Really?
Yeah, because most
I watch a lot of gaming stuff, and these people that are building these gaming rigs, they're trying to squeeze every FPS out of these dang things and every resolution that they possibly can. They want like ultra realistic, no stutter gameplay. Yeah,
and for overclocking a GPU, that makes sense because that's where a lot of the work is done now for games. But here we're talking about a Ryzen. This is the general purpose CPU. So, you know, this is either just people experimenting or I would say, you know, Bitcoin mining is probably a number one. Maybe if you're doing video encoding, well, even that would use the GPU.
I'm just talking about overclocking in general.
Yeah. Because you can overclock just about anything.
When you brought up Bitcoin mining, I thought you were kidding. So interesting that that's actually a legitimate, like, yeah, no, that's probably is the reason. So,
Well, as legitimate as Bitcoin is.
Yeah. Don's favorite coin is Bitcoin.
poor choice of words on my part. So that's I mean, I always like learning new stuff about that kind of a thing. But moving on from hardware, I guess, more into the other side of things, we have some news out of Linux. It says, Canonical unveils Ubuntu 2304 Lunar Lobster, a Linux distro for work and play. This is from ZDNet. So it sounds like this is their bid to be like the go-to for your work desktop and your home setup. And I think it specifically mentions that there's an expanded focus on gaming. So kind of goes into what we were just talking about.
Yeah. So Ubuntu is on a 2-year release cycle. They release a new version every 6 months, right? But every 2 years, they release a long-term support or an LTS version. And so the latest LTS version is 22.04, so it came out last April. And here we are it's the end of April, practically May in 2024, or 2023, if I can remember what year it is. So we're in an off year.
The sweater's getting you.
It is. I'm trying to get up. So we're in an off year. So this is not a long-term support release. This is one of the short ones where they get to experiment with new features. Normally, the stuff that we see in their non-LTS versions will eventually make it into the next LTS version. So that would be 24.04, next April. But there's a really cool feature available in 23.04 that I wanted to highlight that's so important, they're going to be backporting it to 22.04. So they're going forward and backwards on this one. And that is integration with Azure AD. So you've been able to configure an Ubuntu box to authenticate against a Windows Active Directory server for quite some time, but it's always been an on-prem Active Directory domain controller. Now you can synchronize it with Azure AD, which works for Microsoft 365 environments and people that are entirely online. That's been a gap that really most Linux distros have had. You've been able to like cobble it together one way or another, but it's barely worked. Well, with Ubuntu, they're testing it now in 23.04, but they're going to put it into the LTS versions, into 22.04 and the upcoming 24.04, and it'll be a commercially supported product at that point. So, you'll be able to sit down on an Ubuntu machine and authenticate with your online Microsoft credentials. That will be a big gateway into businesses and enterprise.
Oh, this is it, Don. We have finally reached that crucible, right, where Linux will actually overtake Windows as the desktop operating system of choice. Now that it can integrate with Active Directory or Azure Active Directory, this is the thing we've been waiting for.
Well, I don't know that it gets us all the way there, right?
Don't crush my dreams, Don.
So, in today's world, where the majority of our apps are web apps.
Stupid? Oh.
And stupid, yes, both. I mean, that was a given. But they're web apps. Yeah, I mean, you could be on a Linux box, a Mac, Windows, doesn't matter, right? You just need your web browser.
That's it.
And there's Edge that'll run on Linux and Chrome that'll run on Linux and on all the other browsers, Firefox, Brave, whatever, they all run on Linux. So you could grab a Linux desktop. Now you can use it in a work environment that uses Microsoft Authentication.
So that kind of takes me back to our previous conversation, is many Linux distributions are far less resource intensive than your Windows systems. So you start marrying the idea. Actually, I'm making a joke about, this is the thing that pushes Linux over the edge. It becomes, the desktop operating system. But it actually might cut into it a little bit, because when people find out, oh, you mean I get better performance out of my hardware when I run Linux over Windows? And now I can do just about everything I could do before, and just about as easily as I could before. Don't get me wrong. If you get too deep down the rabbit hole, Linux, there's always some little caveats to, if yes, a Ferrari is nice, but when it breaks, it's a Ferrari that's broken, not a Ford, and you're going to have some trouble.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of gaps that Linux has that they haven't been able to overcome. So wireless drivers are not perfect in Linux. Video graphic drivers are horrible.
Of their existence.
Yeah, I mean, just terrible. So if you're looking for gaming or 3D performance, you've got these flaky drivers behind the scene that are sabotaging you the whole time. But for general users, I mean, you just have to look at a Chromebook to see Linux can work just fine. We'll see. I think the big deciding factor on this is going to be the Microsoft desktop applications. Right? There are things you can do in desktop Excel and in desktop PowerPoint that you can't do in the web-based versions.
Yeah.
And so until there's an equilibrium there, then it's still going to keep Linux away from the regular user desktop.
Well, maybe in the next article.
Yeah, next week.
Next week.
I'm curious.
Microsoft apps.
I don't know if either of you guys have an answer to this, or if there is an answer. Is there a reason that they gave it the nickname Lunar Lobster? Does that have like a deeper meaning? Or
Yeah, because they give them stupid names.
they just thought it
all
was
the time.
fun. Okay.
I want to add roll to the end of that. The Lunar Lobster roll.
That'd be good.
So good, it's out of this world.
Exactly.
So they just make it where the first letters, it's alliteration. So it'll always be something like
By Stefan.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing.
Okay. I didn't know if
What
it was like
what was the greasy? Was it gorilla? Something gorilla? Was it gorilla? I forget. They always have stupid names.
ape something.
They always have stupid names. Yes.
Grape ape.
Gorilla good. I didn't know if maybe there was like it's because we released this update when the moon was in Leo and the sun was in
no.
Capricorn. Like I didn't know if it had anything to do with
that might be the case, but
who knows?
they just like
If anybody would know, I figured you guys might know. So I was just curious. That was just a curious question. But I mean, as far as everything else goes, the actual important stuff about that article that have nothing to do with the name. I don't know. It sounds like this is, like I said, I'm not extremely well versed in Linux. It's not. I don't use it. Right. I use Windows. So interesting to hear you talk about like, oh, this could be what pushes it over the edge, and like I thought you were kidding, and kind of sounds like
was.
you're halfway kidding, but then
Yeah.
you were kind of like, well, I
always like to poke the bear with Don on
This
that
whole
because-
episode is let's troll Sophie.
Yes. Yeah. That's what we do.
What's the difference between this week's episode and last week's episode? They're all like that. It's all the same.
The troll NATO is what this is going to be.
It's because I didn't watch an 80s action movies this week. That's
right.
why. This is my
This is your
payback.
punishment. Yes. That'll teach you.
I'm curious to see how you troll me with this next one.
Curious to see what 80s movies you're going to.
Let's see what references I can throw in there. So this one comes from The Verge. It says Google Authenticator finally mercifully adds account syncing for two-factor codes. So I guess I didn't realize before this change, if you lost your device, you also lost your ability to sign in to any service that used Google Authenticator, and you were basically screwed.
Yeah, so let's not make any bones about it. Up until just recently, Google Authenticator basically sucks.
Yeah.
It's not very good. I remember, and we'll have to go back in time again here, probably just 5 or 6 years now, not that far back, when MFA was really starting to ramp up. And so Authenticator apps were coming on the scene, and Google Authenticator was the reliable one from a big vendor that you knew and trusted. I'm doing air quotes because it's Google. But I jumped on that bandwagon for my Google account, and I was like, all right, yeah, let me add this. And I forget what phone I had at the time. I think it was like a Galaxy S8. So that should set the timing right on this. So whatever year the Galaxy S8 came out is when this happened to me. So I had the Google Authenticator, and I had my code set up, and I just assumed that it was like synced up to my Google account or whatever. And then I got a Nexus phone. I don't remember which version of the Nexus that I got because I went through several. And when I reinstalled the Google Authenticator app, I was surprised to find none of my codes were there. And I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Well, maybe it's because I've got it installed on the other phone, and I uninstalled it on the other phone like an idiot. And then that was it. I'd lost my Authenticator codes. That they were just tied to that one phone, and there was literally no way to migrate the codes from one phone to another. And so I had to go through account recovery to get that back. Now, fast forward to today, I have over 60 different accounts with MFA authentication codes right now. Like, that would be a nightmare. Well, I left Google Authenticator years and years ago and switched to Authy, right? Until Authy got acquired by Twilio. I don't trust Twilio, so that's when I ended up jumping over to the Microsoft Authenticator, and I'm more recently moving them into Bitwarden. So I've moved these several times now, but most vendors make it where you can easily transfer those codes from one phone or one device to another. Google only just now has started offering that, which in my opinion is ridiculous. It took them this long.
Tells you how much they respect you.
Yeah, not at all.
They care about your wants and needs, Don, the things that would make you a valued and loyal customer to their base. All I see is big double birds at me from Google.
Like, we're going to ensure your loyalty by chaining you to this radiator.
Yeah. And pretty soon you'll be Stockholmed. And
yeah, you'll get there.
I mean, the Apple people are over there going, yep.
Now, early on, Daniel, the folks over at Google, the engineers behind this said, well, hey, this is supposed to be a factor, like a physical factor of authentication. You have to have your phone. If we let you replicate it to another device, that ruins the whole thing, and it's not secure anymore and whatever. But now everybody does it. So
apparently that wasn't a problem, as I thought.
You're a security guy.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is there, if I have my multi-factor codes synchronized on my phone and my iPad. Let's just say 2 devices.
Okay.
Is that really an increased security risk?
I don't know. I can't think of. I mean, so both of the devices have their own different levels of security.
Yeah.
Right. So if it's going to come down to the weakest link in that chain. So if your phone is insecure, it didn't matter if it was on your laptop, and if it was on your laptop, it doesn't matter if it was on your phone. So it doesn't seem like it. What would frighten me is if someone were to gain access to doing something like, I don't know, maybe like a SIM swap, where I could clone your phone and then act as you to install the thing, the application, the authentication app, and then migrate. That would be what would be scary. But you probably need those MFA codes to do that anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm just off the surface, off the top of my head. I don't see anything that would blatantly, glaringly cause a bigger problem. So,
all right, let me go. I'm going to go a step further.
Okay.
Because Bitwarden, LastPass, and 1Password. I know these 3 do it. I don't know about any others,
Okay.
but these 3 do it. They have where you can actually store your one-time authentication codes in the password manager.
Okay.
So now you go to a website and it autofills username, password.
Oh,
and when it
yeah,
asks
yeah.
the
I've
MFA
seen
code,
that.
it fills that in.
It's
right?
tired of filling out. Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
a new thing. Yeah.
And so it does it too. Now, is that putting all your eggs in one basket?
Absolutely.
So does that totally negate the benefit of MFA?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So your eggs are in one basket, but
So it's like single sign-on, right? We love single sign-on. Single sign-on is great. If someone compromises your single sign-on, you are screwed, right? That's just how that works.
I like how you went through a few iterations. What word am I going to say next here?
It's just
I can
that's
see the gears
thing.
turning.
The same thing. If you have a password manager and it gets compromised, welcome to Oh No world. That's just how this works. We have this level of convenience with these things. Do a good job of security, of protecting that, because it is keys to the castle.
You know, I've thought about this, and Sophie, I don't know if you've thought about it or not, but let's say, so like for my personal stuff, I use 1Password. So I do.
Okay.
Each episode, I'm going to give out one little fact about my life, and if you watch all the episodes,
So my
you'll be able
mom,
to-
who was born a Simpson,
you'll be able to socially engineer me. But I use 1Password, and I thought about like, what would I do if somebody got access to my 1Password? So they got
Yeah.
access to
What
all of
would
my
you do?
personal stuff, and I came up with a game plan.
Let's hear it.
I have a go bag, as everyone should, and I'll go live in the woods.
Because that's a good idea.
That's my plan.
That's a good plan.
It's a good plan.
I like your plan.
It's well thought out.
Sitting here
right.
like ready to take notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you do?
I hope you did, because this is what you do. Like, you see people that get like their stuff compromised, and it is a living nightmare to do any kind of walking it back. I just told my wife the other day, I was like, I'm going to get a new phone with a new phone number, and I like to switch phone numbers probably every 2 years.
Yeah.
Because
Not a bad
that
idea.
stuff starts getting like connected with you a little too deep.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It occurred to me earlier how like freely we like give that stuff out now. Like I was at the store buying something, and I have like a rewards account or whatever, and the person was like phone number, and I'm like giving them my phone number, and I'm realizing like, well, there's nobody here but me and the cashier. But if there were, it'd be really easy for them to just be like, this is her phone number, and like I just didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Before I was like, yeah, here's my phone number, because it's just so normal now
Yeah.
to do that.
You know, it's funny you mentioned it. CVS. I have a CVS rewards card,
Yeah.
and I don't remember how I got it. Somehow I got the CVS reward card, and
One day they handed it to you and said, there you go.
and every time I go and shop, they're like, "Do you have a card?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do."
You don't even have to have it.
And we scan it. Yeah.
They just go, what's your phone number?
Exactly.
But I was thinking about it the other day. I've had this for years and years, right? A long time. I've never gotten a discount or a coupon. Or
You get them when you check out.
Is that it?
They're applied, yeah.
Okay, because I started wondering, like, am I supposed to get a reward? Because
Yeah.
they've never.
They're just harvesting your information.
Yeah,
Of what you
that's
buy.
basically
Yeah.
what's happening.
I'm doing it for free.
It's rewards for
What
them.
does he buy? When does he buy it?
Yeah, I'm a big sucker.
That's
They told you it was a rewards card. They didn't say who was getting the
That's
reward.
right.
So
That's a
technically,
good point.
well, I mean, as far as this goes, it does say they confirmed this is optional. So, like you guys were talking about some of the concerns that come with this cloud syncing
It's
stuff.
not optional. You're a fool if you don't turn it on.
So, if you are worried at all about like, it making you more of a tempting target, I guess, to have all your stuff synced up, you don't have to use it. You can turn that option off or not.
Yeah.
I guess not turn it on. But like you said, why wouldn't you? I guess.
I wonder if maybe you could turn it, like, you're getting a new phone, and so you turn it on just to do the transfer to the new phone and then turn it off.
right.
I don't know. There's probably some use case here.
I'm sure there's arguments to be made for every case.
You know, somebody asked me about, hey, how would you do this and how would you do that? And some security related question that has been long plaguing us as a people. And I go, if I knew the answer to that, I would be a billionaire with a capital B and a capital illion and capital air, right? But that ain't happening.
Sometimes I forget you don't know everything because like
how to spell billionaire.
all the stuff I'm learning is mostly from you. So I'll like come up with a question and be like, oh, what about this? What do you what's the answer to this? Or give me this information or whatever. Yeah. And most of the time you're like, yeah, here's the information you want. And sometimes you're like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Yeah. I'm learning everything from you. And like, I have to like remind myself.
I'm not perfect, okay?
And also I have Google. I have to remind myself I could just look up
ChatGPT now.
And
I'm a dinosaur at this point. I don't
quite trust that. I asked ChatGPT like, tell me about Don Pizzette, and it told me he wrote like 30 books. And so I don't trust ChatGPT anymore. As much as I
don't trust ChatGPT either.
Look, it's been a long day, all right? I clearly need to take a second and reset my brain. So we'll go ahead and take a break. That's going to wrap up our tech news segment of our show. But don't go away. We'll be back in just a moment with some security news. So stay tuned for more Technado.
We are here for the first day with Power School, and we are very excited to see all of you guys over here. I watched Technado for a very long time already. I haven't been watching for the very first episode, but I recently saw the 301, and I absolutely love Don Pizzette and Daniel Rowley and all the security insights that you guys have for us every week. And it's just fun. I mean, we love that you guys provide excellent education with an element of humor, of interesting news without all this boring stuff that all the other maybe competitors are doing. So I'm very happy to go back, and I'm excited to go even further for the bigger membership and dive right into all the important news. So thank you so much. I enjoy it extremely. I love Sophie. Sophie, you're amazing. I love you. I hope that I met you here and all of the others, but still all the other team are fantastic people, and I really recommend everybody else to just get to know IT Pro TV. They're awesome.
Welcome back to Technado. Now that we've wrapped up the tech news segment of the show, we're going to go ahead and jump into some security news. And we're going to start off strong with some more news about password managers. And if you watch this show regularly or listen regularly, you know that this is not a new topic to this show. But this article comes from Slashdot. It says, Proton launches an end-to-end encrypted password manager. So it's called Proton Pass. And Proton is the company behind Proton Mail, which I'm not familiar with, at least not extremely familiar with. So new password manager. I'm a little gun shy about password managers now. I'm curious what your opinion is or what your take is on this.
Yeah, this one's interesting. Proton Mail, they've been around a while, and they have specialized in creating end-to-end encrypted mail. And it doesn't have to be end-to-end. At a minimum, they want to guarantee that your session is encrypted, and so they provide a lot of protection there. As far as we know, they have really been able to resist government influence up until now, and they provide a reliable service. I know a number of people that trust them. I have some challenges with Proton Mail because there's a lot of stuff hidden behind the scenes that they don't disclose, and it's kind of like, do you guys remember TrueCrypt?
Yes.
So TrueCrypt, you could encrypt your hard drive, and it provided a high level of encryption, but we didn't know who wrote it, because it was done in secret. They were worried about being like governments targeting them or whatever, so they never said it. So here was this encryption software, and you could see the source code, but you just kind of had to trust it, and you had no idea who really made it. With Proton Mail, we know a little bit more, but
is Proton an open source software?
I don't know if because it's all server driven, so I'm not sure. But either way, they have really been operating in this space of trustworthy service for quite some time, and a lot of people do trust them. So they've launched a password manager, and I think it's good to see more competition in this space. Obviously, we saw that we couldn't trust LastPass. They completely botched what they did. We have heard complaints against 1Password. Bitwarden's got a pretty decent track record right now, but they've got some challenges too. I don't know if Proton Mail or the guys at Proton are going to be able to do a better job or a worse job. We'll have to wait and see. Right now, Proton Pass is being held just to their I think they have like a paid beta group or whatever that they're letting use it. But in time, this is going to be a free password manager that's released out there to the wild. And the question I wanted to ask here was, Daniel, Sophie, for you guys, when a new password manager comes out, like how long do you wait or what does it take to make it where you'd be willing to trust a new password manager?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about Proton Mail, right? Because it's not like they're new to the game. Like they're a well-known entity. By the way, they are open source.
Okay.
So you can look at the code, and it's not a black box of witchcraft and voodoo that you don't know what's going on. You can figure it out if you have the wherewithal. So it's there. That's nice. So they have like a trust track record, I guess. That would be different than Bob's, an encrypted app. Yeah, it'll be great. You'll love it. It's a password manager for you and enjoy. I don't know Bob. I've never heard of Bob. So that might be a while. I would have to. I like seeing some longevity and some respect from the community for a little while before. I don't know how long that little while is. Maybe that's more of a feeling than it is or maybe I become, like with LastPass. All of a sudden I was a little disenfranchised with them and Bitwarden became the way to fly. Yeah. So
you need them to have like a decent reputation first before you'll...
Especially when it comes to encrypted stuff. Don mentioned that they've stayed out of government's purview for some time. I think they have kind of... there's been a couple of times, if I'm not mistaken. Don't fact check me on that.
FBI dragged them down?
Yeah, where they were subpoenaed and they gave over X, Y, or Z records through whatever reasoning. But like you say, for the most part, I think they're pretty solid company. I used to use this company called C Templar, which their whole shtick was, we do not give up information to anyone for any reason, for anything, nor could we if we wanted to, because we don't have the access to any of your stuff. It's all encrypted by you, from you, but it's done that way. And they talked about the 5 eyes and the 14 eyes and so on and so forth, different eyes. I see Sophia's eyes are
biblically accurate angels is what you're talking about.
Yeah. So 5 eyes are the different countries that have agreed to. So in the United States, they're not allowed to spy on you as a U.S. citizen.
Right.
It's against the law, right? We have laws against this. There's no law, none that we could really enforce against the UK from spying on you and then going, I accidentally leaked that, and now you have it, U.S. So that's kind of the concern and behind the 5 Eyes countries. So that's why I like to see Templar. They have since, from lack of interest from people, they went out of business. So Proton Mail is kind of the king of the hill when it comes to these encrypted end-to-end email systems, and now they've got a password manager, so they have a little trust for me. I do use Proton Mail. I've found it to be fine. It works great. Apps are great. It's open source, so cool for me.
So they are based in Switzerland.
Yeah.
It's a Swiss company, and that means neutrality, allegedly. They have indeed given over information to certain governments, the French police in one scenario, and they had to update their terms of service to reflect that if you are breaking Swiss law, Proton Mail can be legally compelled to log your IP address as part of a Swiss criminal investigation.
Right. Which isn't their doing. It's the legal system in the country in which they operate. So
at that point, they could be providing you an end-to-end secured communication, but it's not completely...
man, I really miss C Templar because they were based out of Iceland, right? And the Iceland government, according to the things I read, are very pro-privacy. And they have made legislation in regards to that, and which is why in Iceland they could have C Templar where they can't compel me to give it to you, even if I wanted to, I couldn't. So I was like, dang, man, I wish they could.
Have I ever showed you the website Iceland Wants to Be Your Friend?
No.
So this sounds like I'm making this up, but I'll pull it up here. Iceland wants to be your friend. There were some programmers, they were trying to get people to move to Iceland.
Okay.
And so they created a funny web page, and the web page is www.icelandwantsToBeYourFriend.com. And when you go there,
bookmark,
it's like a letter written from Iceland to you.
Okay.
Saying, hey, I'd love you to come visit and stuff. And I read it, and it's so entertaining. And I'm like, I want to go to Iceland.
I was going to say, did you buy a ticket? When's your trip?
I do want to go to Iceland. I think it'd be really awesome. I heard a lot of
We should do a
about
conference there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder.
We'll bring some economy to the Icelandic people, and
It could be fun. I don't speak whatever language it is they
here
speak
it is
there.
the most difficult language to learn.
Is it?
Is Icelandic, yeah.
Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah. I saw this thing called Brain Man or something. This guy's got like a 220 IQ or something. He's like a savant. And he learned it in an afternoon.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And went on a talk show and was able to talk about politics. And he was a freak with his ability to learn and absorb knowledge. But they specifically chose Iceland because they said the Icelandic language is notoriously difficult to get.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the website that you mentioned, the As Almost to Be a Friend. It's very cute. They wrote this letter the way that, like, if you see like cat memes and stuff now, the way that people caption cat memes, like that's the way this letter is written. Like, these are my internets for you to click on with your mouse. Like it reminds me of the cheeseburger cat or whatever.
Yeah.
Hi, our Dune cat.
Yeah.
That controls the spice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it's it's neat. I'd like to go there. I haven't learned how to speak whatever it is they speak, but I have listened to some Bjork albums.
Oh, yeah.
So
then you're good.
That counts for
She's
something,
a national
right?
treasure over there, isn't she?
There you go. Should be.
Yeah, no, you're solid. That's all you really need.
Icelandic people are like screaming right now. No.
What the hell were we talking about when we got on the password manager?
Yeah.
So I'm going to double back to password
How
managers.
do we get down this rabbit trail?
I couldn't even, my mind couldn't even go back. I had to look at the article
You got to
list.
pull out a mind map. Okay, then we went here, and then that's connected.
So personally, I would not trust a new password manager that launches. It needs to go through testing, which is exactly what they're doing, right? I think of it like cars. You know, if Ford or Toyota releases a brand new car, you don't buy that the first year.
You don't want Gen 1. No.
Nope. So that's how I look at this. I don't know how long you'd necessarily have to wait to determine that it's viable, but I know when it comes to like encryption algorithms, people wait a decade before they start to leverage it because it's got to be proven. We'll see on this one.
I don't think I'll be switching just because I'm happy with what
Inertia has set in.
You were talking about like, oh, what does it take for you to use a password manager or trust one? And
She's like,
Daniel had a very solid, legitimate, well thought out answer. And my answer was, I didn't use a password manager before I started working here. And then when I started working here, I was like, I need to like change all my passwords immediately.
Yeah.
And a couple years ago or whatever. And when that whole thing happened with LastPass, I freaked out and jumped off the ship. And I talked to Nate, and he told me which one he was using, and I was like, I trust you because you're smart and you know what you're talking about. So I'm also going to, and that was my reasoning for using
Nate's a big Bitwarden guy, right?
yeah. He actually sold me and her on Bitwarden. That's why I went that way as well.
I just was like, I trust you, and you know what you're talking about, and you're a smart guy. So
You know what sold me on Bitwarden? He said, I had LastPass, and a few years ago I decided to switch to Bitwarden. He goes, and it was so stupid easy to transfer everything over. I was like, sold. That is there. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I use Bitwarden for work. I use 1Password for home, which I like having separate password managers.
Yeah.
Because I used to have a LastPass for work and a LastPass for home, and there was all sorts of conflict there.
Yeah.
So
Separation of school and state, right?
separate.
yeah,
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess I'll maybe consider switching once this becomes like an open, it's open to everybody and free to everybody. But for now, like you said, it's only available to, I think, paid lifetime and visionary users.
Yeah.
And I am not one of those.
Yeah,
I don't identify as that.
No.
So it's not even an option for me. So I don't even know why I'm talking about it. It's not. I don't even have the choice to do that.
you just like knowing the things you've been denied in
Yeah.
life.
I might as well know what's being kept from me. But okay, good to know that this is on the horizon, an option you might have soon. We're going to go ahead and move on. This next segment, I was doing my Marge Simpson impression earlier, and it's a decent impression. I can't really do a Homer Simpson impression, but I'm going to try again to do it. This next segment is called Don't!
Better than last.
Okay.
Don't!
I'm keeping tabs.
That was a significant improvement over
Daniel
last
said
week.
better than last. I say I've been practicing. I go home every day.
No, you hear? I said better than last pass. That's what I said.
Oh, I thought you said my impression was better.
That's a low bar.
Oh, I took it as a compliment. I thought he said
I'm
I did.
kidding,
Thought he
yeah,
said I
no.
improved.
I did.
Oh.
Just
I get compliments so rarely to my face from you. It's always like I hear from somebody else like, Daniel said this about something you did. And I'm like, why didn't he tell me that? You got to keep me humble. I understand. So this article comes from arstechnica. It says, used routers often come loaded with corporate secrets. So there was a security firm that found more than half of secondhand routers they bought for testing had all this network information and credentials and all kinds of sensitive data. So I guess they forgot to wipe.
Yeah.
Forgot.
I'm sorry. When I hear forgot to wipe, it's not like it's not got anything to do with routers.
That was the goal.
Oh man, that's like that'd be like, oh man, I forgot to wipe.
If you got kids, routers are not the first thing on your mind.
Oh man. Yeah.
All right. So, if
what
you
was on your mind?
if you've been through a ISO 27001 process or any kind of regulatory compliance, then you know that it's important to have a data disposal process and procedure in place, and that includes destroying equipment you no longer use. If you're selling used computers, you have to have a way to erase the hard drives and do it securely, right? Like a quick delete's not good enough. You've got to write zeros to all the sectors, possibly do 3 to 7 passes, like a lot of things to make sure that your data can't be recovered. Well, many companies don't have time for all that. I don't want to buy. This is old equipment we're getting rid of. We don't want to pay money to get rid of stuff. And so they leverage recyclers and other organizations out there to dispose of their equipment for them. Well, spoiler alert, some of those companies don't do a good job erasing the equipment.
You're telling me that Bob Stupchek's computer crushing service might not be giving me the service I'm paying for?
Might not. And in addition to not erasing your equipment, they might be turning around and selling it on eBay and not crushing it at all.
Bob, you son of a... I'm coming for you.
We're besmirching every product named Bob. Even I got my Microsoft Bob in the background.
Microsoft Bob Stupchek.
But yeah. So in this case, what some security researchers did, and I forget, was it Mandy? No, it was ESET. ESET. They went on eBay. And they just bought 18 random routers that they found, commercial grade routers, not
so like Cisco's and Junipers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think they said Cisco, Juniper, Fortinet. Those are the 3 brands. And Fortinet sucks anyway, right?
I was about to say Fortinet has had no thin butt issues lately. They do not need this PR.
Yeah. So they buy these. Well, this one wouldn't technically be their fault. Yeah. So they bought 18, and of the 18, half of them, 9, had corporate data on them. And when I say corporate data, I mean like credentials for connecting to a site-to-site VPN. And that's a big deal because an attacker that gets a hold of this router could potentially bring it up and have that VPN tunnel reestablished. Now, there's a lot of things we don't know because they didn't actually test this. So the credentials could be terminated on the other side, probably are. Even if they aren't, the VPN tunnel could be defined tied to a particular IP address, which when you buy the router, you don't have that IP. So there's any number of ways where this would break down, but it's also just as likely that if it was a NATed address, then it's not tied to an IP. And you could power that router up, and it may very well establish a VPN tunnel right back to their headquarters.
So, Don, I've got it under good authority from a sampling of many different people that when I talk to them about privacy, that they have nothing to hide, so who cares? Is that not true?
Fact. Yeah, no, that's totally true.
Okay,
Indisputable.
Well, so this is a non-article then, right? Big deal they found this stuff.
Yeah. I think the lesson to be learned here is that while there are companies out there that will offer to erase your equipment,
Bob Stupchek,
unless you do it yourself, you can't trust that it's going to happen, right? I mean,
that's right. Because can you verify that they did what they said they were going to do?
Not if they promised they were going to destroy it.
And if we go by the old adage of never trust, always verify, well, if I can't verify, then you're off the table as an option, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gotten to where it's just like our computers. Yeah. Our computers are probably running File Vault or BitLocker or Lux, right? Disk encryption. And so when you erase them to sell it, it's borderline impossible for anybody to get data off of your laptop or desktop when you get rid of it. But routers, printers, firewalls, access points, they typically aren't encrypted at all.
You think we'll see that become a thing where we start having disk encryption or encryption algorithms become a part of the operating systems?
It should, but it makes it more complex.
It does.
And people...
But we're living in a time where like security is like the big thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So it's like, poo or get off the pot, man. We need this. It's not an option anymore. It's a necessity.
Yeah. Yeah. And some vendors are doing better than others, but... It's a weird place because like Palo Alto firewalls, they do encryption and they can protect themselves. And basically, like you can't buy a used Palo Alto firewall and expect it to work. because you have to sign up for a commercial account. You have to get the serial number transferred over to you. There's all these hoops.
Pain.
So the resale market on Palo Alto is basically nothing. If you buy one of those firewalls, a company will depreciate that value over time. So they expect it to be worth nothing, and then you destroy it. Versus like an individual might buy it thinking, well, I can sell this a few years from now. Not really. and so that's the opposite side of that is you get more security, but you have no resale value.
Do you think like an open source vendor one day will come out with like an operating system that will work on old firewall hardware that you could use encryption and have all that?
Maybe.
I mean, honestly, what to me, the thing that's going to push that kind of stuff into reality is customer like mandates. Like, we require this. You better start doing this or we're not going to buy your products anymore. Now, obviously, people like Cisco kind of have us under, over a barrel or however it is, because they make the things that we use.
Yeah.
And it's hard to move. And this is why we don't like huge, giant conglomerate companies being the one-stop shop where we kind of go for everything we do, because then we're stuck with them. It becomes this marriage of that you can't divorce from, right? I have to get Cisco stuff because Cisco's the only one that makes the thing that does what I need it to do.
Yeah, or maybe other people make it, but Cisco is the ecosystem that you've chosen.
We need competition.
Yeah. It is nice. In the few cases I've had this, where I worked in a place where you had Cisco switches, Cisco routers, Cisco access points, Cisco firewalls.
Yeah, complete ecosystem.
All work together, and from a security standpoint, you can monitor it all, aggregate the logs together, and it really was nice to have that.
Yeah.
But it does lock you in, and you start looking at these other people. Like you look at Juniper and see some feature they have, but if we bring in a Juniper firewall, it breaks the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that's the flip side.
Yeah, I hate that.
I love hearing you guys talk about this stuff just because you guys have been around the block and you know a lot more about this stuff than I do. And so it's interesting to hear you guys' perspectives on this kind of a thing. Because I read this and I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And the more you guys talked about it and you're like, well, I mean, if you trust somebody else to wipe your stuff, it's probably, you just wipe yourself. If you're going to wipe it yourself.
Not helping.
If you need stuff wiped off a device, it's better to just, if you want something done right, do it yourself.
I'm the fanciest boy king in Babylon. Wipe me.
Man, I try so hard, and I still can't get it right.
I'm gonna start a hardware
Wiper
destruction
service.
company, and I'm gonna call it like I don't know, the hardware bidet.
Pristine cleanliness from Don's service. I will wipe it myself.
All right, for you listeners out there, don't register that domain. That one's mine.
Yeah. Stay off the GoDaddy.
That's the moral of the story of that article. Wipe it yourself.
That's right.
Great. So glad that's where we ended up on that one. Okay, moving on. Sometimes we will cover something here on Technado, and a few weeks later, or months later, or days later, or whatever, it comes back to haunt us. We get to cover it again. And that's what this segment's all about. Deja News.
Deja News.
So this article comes from the Hacker News. It says, I guess that would be North Korea hackers employ Matryoshka doll-style cascading supply chain attack on 3CX, which is a long title. So sorry, took me a second. Took me a second to process it. I'm still on the wiping thing, so just give me a second. So I know that you guys had talked a few weeks ago, not here, but just in general, I'd heard talk around the office about the supply chain attack. Why are they calling this a Matryoshka doll-style attack?
All right, so we reported on the 3CX breach a week or two ago. I don't remember anymore because it all blends together. But about how attackers got into the 3CX environment. They did a supply chain breach, right? So they modified the packages for the 3CX VoIP soft phone, and then people would install that soft phone and get infected, right? Well, it turns out that 3CX got infected because of another supply chain breach at an entirely different website, that there is a stockbroker, financial trader, whatever it is, the place you go to sell stocks and bonds and things.
And Bitcoin.
Yeah, where you go to sell your organs and things. There was a company called Trading Technologies I shouldn't say was, they still exist. So there is a company called Trading Technologies, and they had a software package called Xtrader that would let you go on and manage your own stock trades. Well, apparently they no longer distribute that software. And so attackers had created a malicious version of Xtrader, and a 3CX employee had downloaded that. So they installed compromised software that allowed the attackers into the 3CX employee's machine. And from there, they were able to compromise the 3CX software. So that's where the Matryoshka doll kind of story comes in, right?
Yes.
Because it's
layers of on layers.
Yeah, and I wonder how far back it goes, right? Maybe this Trading Technologies place was breached by yet another one, and just goes back and back.
Yeah, it's actually really complex and sophisticated attacks that these North Korean hackers kind of pulled off here. I read through the article and I was looking at all the different things that they did leading up to this. So we have the fintech software, the trading software, right? And then they're using all these different types of attacks, like DLL reflections, right? They're using these open source tools, SigFlip and Daveshell. So I was like, okay, what is SigFlip and Daveshell? And this is to extract and execute the veiled signal backdoor, right? There was just so many different layers to what they were doing. It was extremely complex. So I looked into SigFlip, and I thought these were interesting things to talk about. So SigFlip is a tool for patching authenticated signed PE files, like EXEs, DLLs, SYSs, and so on and so forth, in a way that doesn't affect or break the existing Authenticode signature. In other words, you can change a PE file checksum and hash by embedding data like shellcode without breaking the file signature. That's scary as hell. Yeah. That's a real issue, right? And then you have the Daveshell, or as they put it in here, the SRDI, or shellcode reflective DLL injection tool, allows for the conversion of DLL files to position independent shellcode. Attempts to be fully functional PE loader supporting. So basically, this is how they create their own shellcode. They use the SigFlip capabilities to not break the signed PE to create their own PE with their own shellcode. Like this is super complex capabilities that these people did. So you gotta kind of go, I mean, you guys are total D-bags, but dang.
So it makes me wonder, and I'm going to get off the we've been off the technology chain quite a bit this episode.
We do tech here.
Let's talk about propaganda for a minute, right? Every country has propaganda.
Yeah.
Right. Here in the U.S., we like in school we say the Pledge of Allegiance every single, like you swear allegiance to the country every single day. So we all have propaganda. That's
still do that.
They still do?
I don't know. I'm asking. Do they still do the pledge?
I would assume so. But what we hear about North Korea here in the U.S. media is that like they're all starving, they're living in wicker huts, and it's just like going back in time, being over there. But then you hear about what's got to be one of the most significant, or one of the most, just complex.
Yeah, definitely complex.
Just a high level of technical skill and
orchestration
expertise
behind all this, just to get all this to work.
And so it makes you wonder, like.
So, from what I understand about North Korea and their policy on how this works and why they have such amazing hackers and capabilities, is because they tap you from childhood. When anybody shows any kind of like proclivity or being adept at working with computers, math, science, they just take you from your family and they stick you in a school that all you do is hack. Oh, they just teach you to hack. And that's all you do. You don't do anything else. You don't watch, and you kind of get to live in a life of luxury and stuff because of that. Whereas all the money, so North Korea, I learned this from a lady that is the CIO or CISO for large financial organizations, and she used to be for the NSA. And she talked about how the NSA hackers and what they were doing and how one of their big adversaries was North Korea, and that the North Korean government basically makes most of their money off of hacking money from banks. So, and the way that they are successful at that is that they take them from childhood and they teach them nothing but computer systems, and that is their life.
So it's like the East German Olympic athletes back in the 1980s?
Yes.
All right. Or
got it.
Drago in Rocky
in
IV.
Rocky IV.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All
Nailed
right.
it. His life is to become the greatest fighter of all time.
So, Sophie,
Yeah.
I think Rocky IV, honestly, if you're an American, is a must-watch.
Required
Phenomenal.
viewing.
Yeah, like Red Dawn. I mean, these are things you have to watch.
Wolverines.
But I don't know that it was ever actually proven, but there were tons of allegations in the 1980s that the East German athletes were not genetically modified, but certainly doped up on any number of things, like
there's no doubt they were
steroids and
taking
all that.
steroids,
And they were, I mean, tanks. Like,
Yeah. And that was the women. Yeah. Right. Like, if I'm not mistaken, like they had like mustaches and beards and stuff because they were taking so many hormones.
That was why they had to start doing the XXY testing.
Yeah.
Wait, XY?
We have
There was something
we
weird.
have Ys, yeah.
But it was
Men
like
have Ys. Men have an
three
X and Y.
chromosome
Yeah.
test that they still do to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so in the case of North Korea, so it is very possible that the bulk of the population is living in abject poverty.
I've listened to people that have escaped from North Korea and their stories of like what that was like and the horrors that they had to go through and like what it was like to live in North Korea and how the last person I was listening to said that they lived in a village and they would get electricity like once a week. Right. So one day a week you get electricity, or they would let you have it for like a whole month and then nobody else would have it anywhere else. Right. She said now there's a lot of trading that was done from China. So because they're, basically across a river to China. And these traders would come and they would bring things that were contraband in North Korea, like DVDs from America. And that was like the prized thing, was to get a DVD from America. You could watch a DVD movie from America. And what the government would do is they would give you electricity and would be like, cool, now I can stick this DVD and I can watch my DVD. And then they would cut the electricity while your DVD was in. And then they would come in and they would say, turn the electricity onto this house. And they would hit the eject and see if there was any contraband.
Crazy.
If you had it, you got to go to re-education or worse, depending on what they
what the movie
to do.
was.
Yeah.
If it was Bridges of Madison County,
If it was Red Dawn, no one ever saw you again. If it was Bridges of Madison County, Dear Leader got his hands on that. And apparently that's what they have to call him, is Dear Leader.
Dear Leader.
Yeah.
It's like Mommy Dearest.
Yeah.
Sounds like a cult.
Yeah. It's
Well, I will say one thing. In today's world, when a company gets hacked, one of the first things they do is they do a press release and they say, we were the victim of a very sophisticated attack. Meanwhile, one of their employees clicked on a phishing link and that's it, right? It wasn't sophisticated at all. In this case, it looks like 3CX was the victim of something that was truly sophisticated. So as we learn more details on it, it's pretty impressive. Definitely take some time to check out. This was on thehackernews.com, and they have a good breakdown of all the different stuff that was involved in this attack. It's impressive.
Yeah, no doubt. Take the time. This is definitely worth the read because you'll learn a lot about how companies get hacked, and especially when it's of high sophistication as what we're seeing here.
Would you call this an APT?
Oh, they're definitely AP. It's Lazarus Group. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely an APT. Yeah.
Okay. I love being able to use the vocab words that I learn in the courses that we do. Makes me feel like I'm learning something.
Well, I mean, it does show you that it's not just fluff knowledge.
Yeah,
right?
you're picking it up and it's applicable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm like, would this be considered an APT?
Yeah.
Daniel's like, absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
So it's nice to
so
get
wrong.
something.
Why you embarrassed me?
It's, just means you're a good teacher. That's all.
Yeah.
You just it's what is it? Tough love, right?
Yeah.
You
right.
gotta
Trial by fire.
keep my ego small. That's all.
Hey, it's one day when you're, take my job.
In about 30 years from now, eventually when you retire, a long time from now. So before we wrap up, I know that's our last article, but before we wrap up, I did want to mention Technado is sponsored by ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro. So if you're listening from the Technado website, look for that sponsored by button. And if you click on that, it'll take you to the IT Pro website. So if you want to support the podcast, you can check out those courses. That's what we do in our day job. And I mean, I think it's pretty cool. I'm a little biased, but you can check it out. And you can use the promo code Technado30 for a discount on an IT Pro membership. You can also check out ACI Learning's webinars and live on social events. Those live on their YouTube channel, as well as I believe they're on LinkedIn and things, and they've got a webpage for it as well. So if you miss it when it happens live, you can always go back and watch it later. And of course, you mentioned earlier, Wes and a couple of the other folks are out at RSA this week. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that next week and maybe even get him in here to talk about it a little bit. I don't want to make any promises, but potentially, maybe.
Are you trying to get out of the show?
Yeah.
I actually have a thing
Yeah.
today. It'd be really nice if I
Got
could
some
just head.
stuff I got to do.
I just head out early. I look like I have a life,
Yeah.
But that'll be interesting to hear about next week. As far as I know, from what I've heard so far this week, he's having a great time meeting everybody, getting to...
I heard he met Bruce Schneier.
He did.
Yeah.
He did meet Bruce Schneier.
That's
He was
kind of
very
one of his
excited.
heroes,
He keeps
yeah.
sending pictures of like, look at
Does
these
he?
people I met.
Yeah, he loves some Bruce Schneier, buddy.
All right.
You could tell in that picture, his
Yeah.
smile was like half of his face.
Yeah.
It was neat to see. So
You know, the fear in Bruce Schneier's eyes was real. You could tell.
they balanced each other out in that picture.
I don't know why he was in the bottom of that well.
So as of now, that's all. We only have photo evidence that they're having a great time out there. Maybe we'll be able to hear more about it next week. So that's pretty much all I've got. Is there anything else that I'm forgetting?
That's it.
Somebody
tend
should
to-
probably check and see if Bruce Schneier's checked in. Has he tagged himself safe?
I'm going to take that as a no. So thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of Technado. We'll see you next time.